Okay, guys, I'm really excited because I have the one and only Jennifer Connor here today. If you guys don't know this amazing human, I've known you for many years, and I'm really excited to introduce you to my audience for a number of reasons. One in particular, slightly a selfish reason, that you are a head results coach for our programs. And so the ladies inside our tribe already know you and love you and have learned so much from you. So now the rest of the people who listen to the show are going to get to learn from you as well. So thanks for being here.
Awesome. Thanks for having me. I'm excited.
I'm so pumped. So let's start back for you. Like, how did you get started in the, let's even say, what do you do now and how'd you get started in the online space?
All right. Well, I am a life coach. I specialize in divorce and also the balance of career and relationship. And so I got into that space. I got into life coaching a while back, and I've got like a podcast now and everything. So I work with high achieving women and help them sort their life and relationships out.
Mm-hmm. And you have a lot of personal experience with just that. Like, when did you and I meet? The way we met, we just have to take a moment because this is kind of a crazy, cool manifestation story where we were both in a network marketing company at the same event, saw this really awesome speaker on stage and said, I'm going to pay a bunch of money to go see this guy live.
And both of us overcame odds to get to that original event. So was it amazing that we were both even at that original event?
What were the odds that you had to overcome to go to that first event?
Well, it was the day I had to leave the day after my honeymoon. And so approaching my soon to be new spouse with like, hey, there's this thing I want to go to. And yeah, it's like the day we get back from our honeymoon. It's like, we're in the midst of all living I have a modern family. So I have 2 biological children, and then I also have 2 stepchildren, but one of them was living with us full time. So we were going to get married, all move in together. We didn't live together before we were married, in a temporary apartment that I only had for 3 months while our other house was in construction, and all that stuff was supposed to happen, but I was going to leave. So, caught him early on. So he said yes, but actually he would say yes now too. He's great. But yeah, so that's how I was like, no, I really want to go to this event. And so he said, go for it. So I went, and we didn't meet there.
We didn't, because on my side, I had a cast on my leg because I had fallen in a race a month before, was freaking out, went to the doctor, they're putting a cast on, and I'm like, this has got to come off in a month because I need to go to Texas and go to this event. And he's just like, okay, sure you do. We'll see how it looks. I was like, no, I'm going. You need to tell me how to make that happen. And yeah, I ended up bringing my crutches. I got pushed around in the wheelchair in the airport.
Well, what's even funnier is that now, like, you work closely with James Wedmore. He was the reason that I wanted to go to the original event.
Which is hysterical. Yeah. I
was like, as soon as I found out he was going to that event, I was like, no, I'm going to go. I'm going to that event. So crazy how everything comes full circle. And then you posted in one of our network marketing pages that you had signed up for this other event in California. And did anybody want to share a hotel room? And I'm like, me. So, we didn't sleep together the first night we met, but we did sleep in the same room.
Well, that was the funny part. I remember I was the first one to get there, and it was like 10 o'clock at night, and we had 2 other roommates, and none of us actually spoke face to face. It was just like, all right, let me climb in this bed with this person I've never met before. See you in the morning. Waking up. Never been in that situation. Waking up next to someone I never met.
Yeah.
That's a good thing. But it was pretty hysterical. And like, I wanted to share this so that some of the people who listen to this can see that, when you're starting out, you gotta just do stuff and be as scrappy as possible. Like, just make it happen. We've made it happen. And now we're sitting here today.
And I had to borrow money from my mom to go to that event in California.
Yeah.
I didn't have the money for it, and I just signed up at the event. So it's like every little thing just kind of like came together. It's so funny.
Oh man, like leap and we'll figure it out later. It's like, do it and ask for, like, don't ask for permission, ask for forgiveness. Is that the line?
Yeah.
But yeah, so we did that. And then from there, you and I actually became like success partners or accountability buddies. And we would talk all the time and mastermind on calls. And yeah, it's just been a crazy, cool journey to like see where we've come to today. Like if you had told me back then, like, oh, you and Jen are going to be like on a call doing a podcast in 2019. You're like, what?
Yeah, because that first event was in 2013, and then the event where we, because I had just gotten married, so that's how I always know what year. Yeah.
So freaking funny.
Later, here we are.
Here we are. I love it. I love it. I love it. So for you, you obviously have a lot of experience within your area of expertise. Mm-hmm. So I'd love for you to just kind of fill in some of your perspective on like, what are some of the biggest struggles for online entrepreneurs, primarily women who, you know, are maybe having some relationship problems? What are they not seeing yet?
Yeah, I would say,
I mean, this is such a big
there's kind of, yeah, there's sort of two avenues that you can go. I would say the first thing is, you know, not feeling the support from their spouse or their partner. And it can be like a blatant, like he just says he doesn't, he doesn't support you, or it could be your interpretation of things he's said or done, and you're thinking like, I just don't have the support, or he just doesn't understand what you do. Because a lot of times, I don't think my husband still doesn't really understand what I do. He's all gung-ho for it. But
yeah.
like, you know, it's just not he's in the corporate world. It's not his jam. And that's fine as long, you know. But so a lot of my clients get caught up in whether or not their spouse supports them and how to handle that, or if it feels like their business is getting in the way of their relationship with their spouse or with their children even.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And then the other side of that would be kind of self-imposed, where, you know, especially with perfectionist type A, high achieving women, we like to set these crazy expectations for ourselves, and society has set a lot of expectations for us too. But especially being a woman and being in a career or being entrepreneurial, you have these expectations that maybe you set for, you feel like are being put upon you, but a lot of times it's being put upon you by you to be all to all people. So it's like, I was telling someone the other day, I'm like, you know, if I wanted to juggle and spin plates, I would have joined the circus. Like that's not, you know, and that's what I think a lot of hardworking entrepreneurial women are doing.
Yes. Yeah. This is, I mean, there's so many things that we could kind of unbox, but I do want to go back to, I'm like, we've got so many things to cover today. So you're talking about support, and really like, we can just start with the spouse that blatantly says, I don't support you. I don't agree with what you're doing. I don't like how much money you're spending. I feel like that is a good portion of the audience that's listening to this right now. And, you know, people reach out to me too and say, you know, how do I navigate this? Mm-hmm. What do I say? How do I respond? How do I get them to understand and see my vision? And it really does come down to like that baseline of communication. But I'm curious from your perspective, like, where do they start repairing that?
Well, you know, the coach in me is like, does he have to understand and see your vision? Ooh. Like, why do you need him to understand? I just told you my husband doesn't understand, but you know, he has no freaking clue what I do. Maybe he'll listen to this, but only if I like pass the link to him, you know, for this podcast episode. He just, but yeah, a lot of times it's, it can break down. It can be majorly communication. So if the husband is saying like, I don't agree with you, I don't support this, what does that mean to him? Like when he says, I don't support this, or I don't agree with you, it could mean that he's upset about the money. It could mean that he feels like it's taking away from his time. You know, I was at a client who had always stayed at home and with her kids, and she picked up another gig, you know, and she was having success with it, but like her husband was having a really hard time with her not being available when he was available, because he'd always been used to that. So I think just drilling into like, what is the person saying, and what are they actually meaning when they say it? And why do you care?
Yeah.
And that's fine if you do. I'm not saying like, just do whatever you want to do. Screw your husband,
Eh,
but, I think the communication side is important, but also figuring out when he says X, Y, and Z, you're only feeling a certain way about it because of how you think of that. So like
mhm.
says, I don't support you, you have a thought about that is producing whatever feeling you're having about it, that's maybe making you feel sadness or overwhelm or hopeless. And you are in control of how you interpret it and what you think about it.
I love that. This is so good. And then on the other side of this, there are the spouses who are not necessarily saying blatantly that they're not supportive, but they're showing their, I don't want to say lack of support because that's an interpretation, but they're showing some level of dissatisfaction with their partner. And I think that could show up in a number of different ways. I mean, even when I was early on in my coaching business, at the time I was still living with my parents, and, I have nothing but love for my dad. And I know that this was coming from all of his stuff, but he would do very passive aggressive stuff and be very disrespectful. Like when I was on sales calls or coaching calls, like he would make noise and I'd be like, hey, I'm on a call or I'm about to do a live video. Like, can you turn down the TV? Can you turn off the music? And it was like, no, this is my house. And it was like, okay, cool. Like, so I think it can show, and I share that only because I think it's relevant, but it's like, it can show up in so many different ways. And I think that can be really challenging as a new entrepreneur when you already are kind of battling your own inner voice, and then to have other people around you not really showing their support. So, I mean, I guess the real question here is there a way, and what are maybe some ways that people can become better at communicating their needs to the people that they are surrounded by?
Oh gosh, this is such a can of worms.
I know.
Well, there's so many areas to go with this, but I think many of us think that other people have to do or say things to fulfill certain needs within us, and that's not true. So we can let other people be whoever they want to be and say whatever they want to say and do whatever they want to do, which is very kind of us to let them be that. But, they're humans and they have free will and they can do or say whatever they want to say. So we don't really have any control over that. And we can just let that be, and we get to figure out how we feel about it. So you can even, an example gave with your dad, like that's a great place where I would say to my client, like, okay, well then you got to figure out what a boundary is.
Yeah.
If he does this, then I do that. And it's not the same as an ultimatum. It's not, if he doesn't take out the trash, then I'm not having sex with him, It's not that, because a boundary comes from a place of love and respect for both people.
Yep.
Oh, 100%. So, and I probably I got off onto two different tangents with the answer to that. So if you need to.
No, but this is really good, because even, I had to go in and have a lot of conversations with both my parents back when I was starting. Cause like their interpretation of what I was doing was like, oh, you're just sitting behind a computer all day. Why don't you go outside and look at the sky? Have you walked outside today? Why are you just playing on social media? And they didn't understand what I was building. And now they do. Now they're like they still don't get it, but they're in complete awe of what's happening. Like, whoa, I can't believe you actually did this.
Oh my gosh.
They don't get it.
I was running my business for years, and a previous business too for years. And I don't think my dad or my brother ever asked me about it. Yeah. And then I made like $6,000 in a week, and my dad's like, hey, how's your business going? Blah, blah, blah. It's like, it's just so crazy. But like different people, having a conversation or just understanding that other people think in different ways. Like,
yes,
it's not intentional disrespect towards you. It's just literally that maybe your dad and my dad don't see the validity in something until they see the money.
Yep. Oh, 100%. That's, and I think
a lot of spouses are that way.
I'm gonna say that's a lot, especially for men, not to generalize, but whether it be nurture or nature, it doesn't matter. But men, in especially when there's an entrepreneur female and a husband in the picture, more often than not, I do see that the male's like, hey, what are the stats? What's the data? What's the sales? Why aren't there any sales? You're spending this amount of time. It should be this amount of output. And yeah, that can be really challenging because they're looking at it in such a linear way and looking at it as an employee, and they're not seeing what a business, like they're like, even with debt or like investing in coaches or courses, like that's a whole other can of worms. But it's like, I see.
Oh, we gonna open that can.
We gonna open it right now. Get your pliers, get your wrench.
Get out your fishing rod because we gotta get some worms out.
But yeah, they don't see they don't see the difference rather between personal debt and business debt. I knew that. I could see it in your eyes.
Yes. To go with it. Yes, that was a huge turning point actually in my marriage, in my relationship with my husband, because I know a lot of us, when we're especially on online space, like we are so lucky that we can start businesses for such a small amount of money in the grand scheme of things. I mean, if you want to go start a franchise or something, you better have like 200 grand.
Mm-hmm.
And you got to pay that, if you start a brick and mortar or any other, big type of business, that you're going to have to invest money you don't have.
Yeah. And
a lot of times I think, especially spouses that are more the employee mindset and they've never done the entrepreneurial side of things, they look at the debt you're taking on, if you're taking on debt, or just expenses that you're creating or having for your little business, as like money down the drain.
Yeah.
Instead of, or as like the same thing as personal debt, which like, we're all like told not to go into debt. But if you told someone who's building, like I said, like a franchise, that's just an easy example. Well, you can do this, but don't you dare take on any debt. Like what? That's crazy. And it took me really sitting down with my husband, because he and I, we're both big spreadsheet nerds, but his aversion to risk is much different from mine. We were actually laughing about that a couple of days ago, because I was putting in my notice at my, I had like a little part-time job, and it just didn't make any sense for me to stay there income wise or anything. But his aversion to risk is so much higher than mine. And I'm just like, this is fine. This is no big deal. But he has to like stop and think about it all. And I think that's helpful too, just to bring it back to the relationships and coaching part of things, is just understand other people and where they're coming from, and that like you might not see things through the same lenses, and that's fine. Mm-hmm. And like somebody else might think that you're that this is a crazy thing to do. And as long as you're good with your reasons, and I mean, it comes to a point, obviously you don't want to like, and a lot of times I deal with that, that's where it gets to more of a one-on-one conversation,
right?
Individually with clients. But yeah.
Oh man, this is so good. So how then does somebody communicate that to their spouse? How do they communicate the difference? Because I think the money thing for entrepreneurs is really the biggest point of conflict with their significant others.
Okay, well, I want to immediately give you one specific way to do it. But again, you do kind of have to know your spouse. You have to know. I'm remarried, which is one of the reasons I specialize so much with divorce, is because I've been through all of that. And my first husband versus my husband now would be totally different ways of relating to them. Mm-hmm. And ways of, not to say convincing, but you know what I mean? Like pitching it to them would have been in a totally different way. Right. So like if you have a partner or spouse who is very analytical, you want to make sure that you know your numbers and you have an actual plan. Like, this is how much I anticipate this is going to cost. I want to go to this event. Yes, it's, $2,000 or $3,000 or whatever, but I expect to earn X, Y, and Z from the tools that I get from this event. Really just like lay it out in that more of like nerdy, you don't have to do a spreadsheet, but if that's how if it was my dad, for sure, I'd have to lay it out that way. He's an investment advisor. He wants to see the bottom line. Mm-hmm. But for someone whose spouse is maybe like a more of a free spirit or more of a creative or whatever, you can approach it from the like, this is what I want to do with this money that I'm going to earn. And this is how it's going to affect our family. And, in the meantime, it's just this little thing that I have to do first to get us to that space. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Like that version would be speaking more to the vision and the impact and Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, so you just have to know your partner, and maybe you guys have, and that could be very helpful too if you feel misunderstood or if you feel like you're not being supported. It could just be that the support is coming to you in a way that you don't recognize. So very similar to like the 5 love languages. I'll just use an example from one of my clients. She would just get so frustrated with him because like little things around the house that she wished he would do. And even sometimes would express to him that she wanted him to do those things and then he wouldn't do them. And then she would just interpret it to mean that he didn't respect her or her business and that he thought that she could just spend her afternoon cleaning because, well, she's home anyway. You know, like that was her interpretation. Meanwhile, you know, I actually know this for a fact because they did end up having a conversation. Like, to him, that didn't mean anything. Like, he wasn't trying to send a message by not cleaning it up. It literally just wasn't that important to him. And he didn't realize how much it meant to her and what was on his radar. But what he was doing was buying things for them. Like, he was contributing in this whole other way. That was like his way of showing support. And she was totally oblivious to it.
Wow.
So like he likes to give gifts, and maybe that's like not necessarily how she wanted to feel the support, but like he bought her something for her office.
Aw, yeah.
You know, that kind of thing where it's like, but she was so determined that he was not supportive that she couldn't even see that.
Wow.
You know? So,
Yeah, it sounds like she wanted to receive the acts of service. We're talking about
yeah.
the 5 love languages, and he's like, I'm giving you gifts. Receive
Yeah.
it. Yeah.
Yeah. And then, I mean, of course you can communicate with a person, or this is the less popular answer, but it's the answer that I actually like the most. It's like, if you really want to be in charge about how you feel about something, you can change how you interpret it.
Mm-hmm.
You can change your thoughts about it. So if he's not, you know, if he's doing something like, let's just use the cleaning thing again, you've asked him to do something and he hasn't done it, you get to choose whether you think that means he doesn't respect me or my business, or he thinks I should do it because I'm the woman. I mean, you could make it mean a million different things, or you could choose to make it mean like, oh, he didn't have time to do that today.
Yeah. It could mean like, that's the thing. People are not recognizing there's the facts.
Mm-hmm.
You said words. Hey, can you clean this? Fact, it was not cleaned yet.
Mm-hmm.
And anything else is an interpretation.
Or like a huge trigger to get back on more of the like entrepreneurial aspect is when, and I always say a husband because I'm a woman and not that I couldn't have a wife,
Hey.
but you know, hey, but, because I personally have a husband. But when he comes home and says, what did you do today? Or even, how was your day? And that could be coming from, there's like 4 different layers to communication. There's the words that were said. There's the intention behind the words that were said. Then there are the words that were received or heard and the interpretation of those words. So somewhere from, how was your day today? He could have intended to legitimately be like, how was your day today? Like, anything cool happen? Making small talk. But if you're in a certain frame of mind, you might take that as like, what, did you even do anything today? Like, you just sit behind your computer all day.
Mm-hmm.
And that's how you interpret it. So you maybe even heard the same words, or I've seen people literally swear up and down that they heard different words.
Yep.
And I mean, I think there's like science behind that for why like in trials, why eyewitness accounts and stuff are so like
so all over the place,
because people can literally swear up and down that they heard certain words that they didn't actually, that weren't actually said. So yep. I guess just like coming back to that is like, give him the benefit of the doubt.
Hell yeah.
Like, what's it gonna hurt?
Exactly. And just to inject some of the science or the brain part of it, we are being given 2.3 billion bits per second of information. We are filtering that down to 126 bits per second. And there's a part of our brain called the reticular activating system that's taking in 4 of the senses, just not smell. And it's basically filtering all of this information down through this tiny, tiny, tiny little hole, imagine it that way.
Mm-hmm.
And when we're taking that much information and we're filtering it down, we're deleting, distorting, and generalizing it based on our filter. So if, like you're saying, this wife, her filter is, he doesn't support my business. A filter could be a belief, it could be an identity. And so if the belief is, he doesn't support my business, anything that happens in interactions with the spouse is going to be filtered through that belief. And so the interpretation is going to have a little seasoning, a little flavor, a little undertone of that filter. It's almost like walking out of, or I always say, like walking into your house when you were outside with sunglasses on and you're like, why is it so dark in here? Like, it just gives it that little tint. Thankfully with sunglasses, we're like, oh, I'll take them off. But when we have those beliefs, we don't see them as beliefs, we see them as facts. And so
100%. And when I work with clients who are specifically trying to work through their divorce, that is one of the biggest things that we have to work on, is that, you know, you've got this lens through which you're viewing your ex-husband. And especially if you're having to interact because you're co-parenting, like, you need to either be aware that this lens exists and like ask yourself, well, what other possibilities could, you know, what else could he have meant when he said that? Or what else could that have meant when he did that? Or you have to, you know, ultimately the best part is to just remove the lens and like just learn how to neutralize and diffuse those feelings, so that you just view that other person as another human being and not with that filter over it.
And I can almost hear certain people listening to this right now going, I hear what you're saying, that, you know, this thing is a belief, but this other thing, that's not a belief. It's a fact. This person sucks. This person doesn't support me. That's fact. Like, look at all this evidence that I have.
Yeah.
And it's just like, it's so, like, I'm just hearing that in my head. And I'm like, there's so many people that want to argue for their beliefs because they have such an attachment to being right. And when you're looking at husbands and wives, like, I don't even know what to ask, but like, what do you see when people are fighting for their beliefs at that level?
Well, they've already just decided that someone thinks a certain way or is a certain way because of something they said or did, but really the only facts are the words that came out. Everything else is what you think about it. So yeah, I mean, as soon as you started talking about that, I was like, you just don't know how many people are out that I work with that are like, yeah, but my ex is an asshole. Like, I'm like, no. Like, it's like, to me, I always ask, like, would every single person on the planet agree with that? Like, would his mom agree with that? You know, would like Joe Schmo down the street that he passes by have that strong of an opinion about him? Like, no, if you can't, like, if every single person, if, you know, it could not come to the conclusion that that is 100% fact, then it is not. Right. And it's a really extreme example. And I think I've told you this one before, but like, I get to the point with my clients where, you know, you want to argue for these limiting beliefs because you think they're fact, but you can even go to the most extreme of examples, which would be like 9/11. And most of us would agree that 9/11 was a tragedy, like 100%. And like, you can continue for sure to think and believe that. But you got to consider that there's a whole other section of people that thought that that was a great victory. And so 9/11, the event happened. That's the only fact there. The rest is all the interpretation of the people, of all the individual people. So when you can take it and make it something that extreme, then it kind of sometimes helps people realize that when they say like, my husband doesn't support me, that's not a fact. That's your thought. Maybe your husband, if he said the words, I don't support you, then you get to decide what you think about that. And it's a small shift, but it's a huge, I mean, I would say it's probably the biggest, it's one of my favorite things to work on with people.
Yeah. Well, it's so powerful, and it really does completely break through the belief and the problem and the lens, and just like totally reframes it. So kind of going back to what you were just saying, we all started talking about expectations again, of like, he doesn't support me. Is he saying it, or is he just quote unquote showing that he doesn't support you? And if he's not quote unquote showing his support, what are the expectations that the individual has around it? And you were kind of speaking to this before.
Like, what does showing support look like? And then you can really get real deep and be like, and why do you need that?
Mm-hmm.
Like, why does that matter to you?
Yeah. So powerful. So
And I mean,
powerful.
it can come off, you know, when you're not talking about a specific example, it can kind of come off as like callous or like, well, you know, your relationship's going to fall apart or whatever. And it's not that, it's not to that extreme. It's literally like, okay, if this is what you're thinking and this is how you're feeling and you don't want to feel that way anymore, then you've got to take some action. You've got to change things up, talk it out, figure out what the intention was,
Yeah.
figure out how maybe your interpretation wasn't accurate, you know. But the reason I think this is such important work is because you can take this home life, this, you know, your relationships with your spouse or with your kids or your parents or whatever, and there's no way to totally separate it from your work life.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of times people will like bury themselves in their work to try to avoid their home life, or they'll use their kids as an excuse as to why they didn't get something done for their business.
Ooh, that's big.
Because, you know, the
My
kids
life.
thing.
There's so many things here. Okay, well, let's talk about that for a second.
Okay.
And the implications and the cost of actually continuing to use your spouse or your kids as the scapegoat as to why your business is not growing.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I don't think people are seeing, like, I don't even know if they're totally consciously aware that they may be to some degree doing this. And they might say, well, this isn't an excuse. This is just my reality.
Right.
But that's, again, we don't see things as beliefs. We see them as just the way that it is.
Mm-hmm.
So for somebody who's operating from that belief of, I can't get things done because my husband doesn't support me, or my wife doesn't support me, or my kids are X, Y, and Z. Mm-hmm. If they keep playing that story, like, let's just lay this out for people. Like, what is the cost? How is this going to show up down the road?
Well, you'll either never take off in whatever it is you want to do. And I'm a firm believer that if a desire is put in your heart, that it's there for a reason. And so many of us will use our families, our kids or our spouse or whatever, as like a reason why we weren't able to do that thing. Mm-hmm. And one question, I kind of ruffle people's feathers sometimes, but I'll turn it back around because I work solely with women, and I'll be like, okay, would you think this way if it was a man? If you were a man, would you have the same expectation of yourself? Mm-hmm. And a lot of times that'll just like break the spell of being like, whoa, because there's so much, again, where it's like, it's a belief, but it feels like a fact because we've all just grown in a certain way and learning, you know, how the world works, quote unquote. And so, yeah, you'll either end up with nothing, like not building what you want, and being like resentful. It kind of comes back in one way or another, or you build something and I know a lot of people like to come from the space of like, I'll show him, but that can really backfire too.
Okay, let's talk about this, because I see a lot of people saying that, where there is the resentment for sure.
Yeah.
Of feeling not supported and all of that. And there's the resentment builds over time. But they're building their business as like a revenge strategy.
Right. And then what happens if you like lose that? Like, you're looking outside of yourself for your motivation, you know? So this actually happened to me in the network marketing days. I was married to my first husband, and one of my big goals had to do with making enough money for something for him. And then when our marriage fell apart and ended, I felt like totally lost because I had not really been working my business for me.
Wow.
And it doesn't mean that you can't want things for your family. Like, I totally want to be able to support my kids through college and that kind of stuff, and, you know, go with my husband on amazing trips and, you know, blah, blah, blah. But there's got to be that thing. You can't look outside of yourself for, like, the desire didn't come from outside of you. So your motivation and your drive shouldn't come from something or someone outside of you either.
Mm.
Especially when it comes to the kids thing. And a lot of that is, the whole mom guilt side of things. And that's one of my favorite topics because I was a professional at feeling guilty.
Yes.
And I've come such a long way, and I get to see the spark go off in other moms' eyes when they realize that all of this really is self-imposed.
Yes.
And so the reason I'm trying to form the thought here, the reason that a lot of people use these excuses of their kids as an excuse not to do stuff for their business, and it doesn't feel like an excuse, is because the pain of the guilt that they would feel is so much worse than what they're perceiving they would get from putting into their business.
Whoa,
It's you don't want to build a business because you're running away from something. You want to build your business because you're going towards something.
Mm.
And the mom guilt thing can just pull you into a deep, dark hole. But it's all, again, just based on even if your kid says, "Mommy, why can't you play with me? You're always working." It's up to you to determine how you feel about it, what you think about that. You could totally 100% agree and think I'm the worst mom ever. Or you could think well, of course I can't play with you anytime I need, anytime you want me to play with you, but we get in plenty of playing. You're good.
You're going to be okay.
You're going to be okay. And it took a while. I think there's so much online, especially with social media and the Pinterest parenting and all that. And no, nothing against you if you're a Pinterest parent. My mom was a Pinterest parent. She still is. She's always doing crafty, awesome things. But I think so much of it is, in this day and age, women are more likely to have their careers or a side business or whatever. And that's a very different thing from what a lot of us grew up with. Mm. And so learning that we can make our own expectations for ourselves and our families.
Yes. And I really see so many of my clients deeply struggling with this. And I'm not a parent. So I always really enjoyed these conversations around really speaking to how does one navigate this? Because obviously I'm not a parent. I'm sure if I ever am, my perspective will totally be shifted on that. But I guess in my head, I had a working mom growing up. So that was just my normal. And it didn't occur to me until the other day, actually. Might have even been something that you had said in a conversation in one of the groups, but I was oh yeah, my mom worked all the time, and she had her own business and still does have her own business as a therapist. And so for me, it was oh yeah, mom goes to work, mom has her clients, mom does her paperwork. That was just the accepted normal. And and we had plenty of playtime and we did all that stuff, but I never really heard her complain about it. She never seemed to struggle with it. I'm sure she had moments, but she really genuinely seemed to enjoy both sides of it. And we had my grandparents babysitting. But in group coaching programs, even a couple of years ago, almost all the women were moms. And I just remember sitting there on these coaching calls and they were just every single one of them wanted to niche into helping moms with mom guilt. Mom guilt, mom guilt, mom guilt. I'm what the heck is going on with all this mom guilt? Why are so many women spending their lives operating from an emotional set point of guilt?
And then it begs the question, do they want to coach people on mom guilt because they wish that they had the solution for it? Do you know what I mean?
Yep.
Coach on them because yeah.
I think so. Yeah. They're oh my gosh, self-care.
Huge thing, because I think and sometimes you will get expectations from outside people, maybe your own parents or whatever, that are you really should spend more time with your kids, or you really should blah, blah, blah. And it's okay, noted. You can have your opinion.
Thanks, Peanut Gallery.
Yeah, but it takes a while to get to that space. And it takes a lot of thought work to get to that space. And that's what I totally nerd out on, but that was something that made it. I used to have major anxiety on the way to pick my kids up from daycare. And I used to wait until almost the very last minute at 6 p.m. was when, after 6, you got to pay $5 a minute or something crazy. but I would wait until the very end to go pick them up, because there was something about when they weren't home, I didn't feel like I like felt a little bit of relief. But that was all based on, you know, what my thoughts were about it, which was like, you know, well, they're not here for me to look, you know, to look after right now anyway. But then I would judge myself and have major guilt about waiting until 6 o'clock. You know, so it was like, it was really a no-win situation. And,
so
you know,
wait, I'm curious, what was the thought that you were thinking that was like generating the anxiety about picking them up at 6 o'clock? Like that you should want to spend more time with them or something?
you know, isn't this supposed to be like the most beautiful time in your life? And like, you're just supposed to like love every butt wipe and every, you know, snot bubble. And I wasn't that mom. Like I like adore, they're 8 now. I have 2 boys that are 8, they're twins, and I adore them. And I loved them then too, but it was just like a different, I didn't have that experience where like everything was just magical and the magic of motherhood. That just wasn't like, I viewed motherhood then a whole lot like I view it now, but without the guilt, or with the guilt back then.
Okay, so I'm curious, what is your perspective on motherhood now?
Well, I think you know this, but you know, I believe, and I was coached on this back in the day, that I believe that I'm exactly the mom to my kids that I'm supposed to be. That includes being divorced, that includes 50-50 custody, that includes, you know, me working, or literally last week, like threatening them, please do not come downstairs, I have a client call, because it's summer and I'm like, you know, work from home mom in the summer. And yeah, so every aspect that's happened, what some would deem good, what some would deem bad, whatever, those things all are happening to and for my children and to and for me at the same time. So being able to give my kids the experiences that they have, whether they're deemed, you know, typical or whatever, it's not that. It's like, this is exactly how it's supposed to be, because this is how it is.
This is so important. Just to add to this, I think I shared this with you the other day that, sorry mom if you're listening to this, that she listened to an episode that I did on the Mind Your Business podcast, and she's like, it was so great and there were so many things that you said that were wonderful. There was one thing that you said, and then went on to be like, you weren't confident as a child. What do you mean you weren't confident? Blah, blah, blah. And started saying all this stuff about how, oh, well, you know, that reflects poorly on the parents. And I am very blunt with my mom, and I'm just like, yeah, I mean, you can choose to interpret it that way. I was like, I'm telling you it had nothing to do with you, and that you gave me lots of positive affirmations and all the love in the world, and my lack of confidence had nothing to do with you at all. And I said, but you can continue to choose to believe that it had to do with you. You're certainly welcome to that interpretation. You might want to re-listen to the episode though. But really what I was saying to her is like, I wouldn't be who I am doing what I'm doing today on my journey if things had transpired any differently. And I even pulled Tony Robbins in, and I was like, Tony Robbins always talks about, he's like, well, mom beat the shit out of me. But because he went through all that pain, through that pain was created this ability to really connect with people on a way deeper level, because he also understood their pain. He was able to experience higher levels of empathy. And I do feel like the challenges that I went through also armed me for that. And you went through, and all of us have gone through. I remember saying to some other friends of mine who were like, oh, I'm ready to have kids. I got to figure more of my shit out so that like I could be the perfect parent. And I was like, if you're the perfect parent, you're going to have boring ass spoiled kids.
Yeah.
Are they not going to have any challenges their entire lives? You're going to keep them in a bubble? I'm like, they're going to have no character. They're not going to know how to interact in the world. And they were like, oh, you're right.
This has been something that's so cool about having twins who are boys. So it's 2 boys born on the same day. They live in the same house. Whether it's gross or not, you can judge me. They share the same underwear because I don't have separate underwear drawers for them. So we just throw all the clean undies in one drawer. Okay. So like they're in the same environment, you know, One of them is very confident and outspoken and, you know, whatever. And the other one is a lot more withdrawn. And we have to work, I work a lot more with him on expressing his feelings and stuff because he shuts down. It has nothing to do with, I mean, it could have some aspect to do with me, but I choose to believe that, like, you know, they're their own people, and they're, you know, especially when kids get past even like ages 4 and 5, and you probably know more about this with the brain and everything. It's like they're having their own thoughts now. So yes, you want to be aware of the environment that you're putting, you know, you have your children in. But ultimately, like when they grow up, they're going to be grown-ass adults, and they're going to be able to choose the path of their life, regardless of whatever you did or said or how their childhood was.
Amen.
So all you can do is show up and just do your best. You know, like, and some days your best is, you know, throw in a Lunchable in a grocery bag because your kid has lost his lunchbox for the 3rd time and you're tired of buying new lunchboxes, and you don't make little bento box lunches.
There's no note with a little heart on it.
Definitely. Yeah. And then some days you just like, you're like crushed it, like, you know, but I think for the moms out there, expecting that it's a roller coaster and just being like, oh, this is one of those days when I'm going to feel like a crappy mom. Okay. Noted. You know, like, expect it.
Yeah. Oh,
It's going to happen.
I know this is going to give so many people permission to just not feel like shit. I can't wait for you guys to, like, well, now you're listening to it, but I'm just very grateful for this conversation. Yeah. I mean, we talked about so many different things,
I know.
which I love, because I love episodes like this where we just kind of dig in and kind of intuitively follow the scent. Is there anything that we didn't cover that you felt really called to share today?
I don't think we didn't cover it. I think that my main message here is just that it's all intertwined, and there's no such thing as like a work you or a career you and a home you. Like, you are you, and everything comes together. So you need to take care of both parts. So you could have an amazing business and take care of every tiny nook and cranny, but if you're not taking care of your emotional health and your interpersonal relationships and stuff, it will bleed into the business some way, somehow. It will affect your income some way, somehow, and vice versa. So, you know, there just aren't, so many of us try to compartmentalize and, you know, work when you're in the work zone and be family when you're in the family zone. And I while I say that I help people with work-life balance, I really don't believe that there's a balance, because that would mean there's one thing on one side and one thing on the other. I think there's just one thing.
I like that. That's really good. Good.
So yeah.
I just have to add one thing to this, because that really is something that I don't think people fully understand, right? They, like you're saying, they want to fragment the parts of them instead of recognizing their one wholeness. And if you are having issues with your family or with your relationship or with your friends, like Jen just said, like, it will bleed into other areas. I remember one of my clients, she was having success, but was feeling some like upper limit stuff come in, and she just like wasn't sure why her business had plateaued. And what was really underneath that was conflict with her spouse, that she was investing really heavily in her business. She was sitting there going, well, why doesn't he just support me? While also telling me that he's giving her thousands of dollars to continue growing. And I turned around and I said, well, okay, well, when is the last time you said thank you to him for basically funding your business? Well, you get to, you know, he's doing something he doesn't love doing, but you're getting to pursue your dream, and he's allowing for, or not allowing, but he's helping to support and create that. So like we were talking about earlier, there are different ways that somebody could be giving support. And she turned around and she was like, you know, you're right. He is supporting me, and I haven't said thank you. And she completely broke down crying, and then went to him and was able to communicate that new level of appreciation and gratitude. But for all of you guys, if there's stuff going on in your relationships that you're ignoring or you haven't dealt with, or like you were saying before, you're using business as a way to not deal with the stuff that needs to be dealt with.
A lot of my clients that are divorced, they consider that like a failure, like a tick on their permanent record, how like it's like tainted everything in their personal life. And they don't realize that that thought that they're somehow a failure because they're divorced, it bleeds into everything. It's going to come into your business life. It's going to come into every part of your life. But so as not to end on a black cloud, it works the opposite way too. So like if you're really taking care of yourself emotionally and mentally and like working on, and you will never get to like this mecca where everything's perfect and all relationships are great at all times. And I think just knowing that and expecting that can be a big burden lifted off of people. But you know, it works both ways in that you're taking care of your home relationships can make you have more creativity, or like, you know, it just comes into your business in another way, or having something in your business where you've got this amazing growth or this belief, or like, I know for me, if I'm like really consistent and I've set little goals or to-dos for myself and I'm really consistent with that, I have this thought that like, I'm a successful person, and going into my home life feeling like a successful person, even when I have to throw the Lunchable in the grocery bag, it's a different lens.
Yeah.
It's not the same. So you can take these thoughts and beliefs that you're having in the different aspects of your life, and they all work together.
Boom.
Which, so the good ones too.
More of the good ones.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I know people are going to be like, OMG, I need to get to know this human on a deeper level. So where can people go to connect with you and learn more about you?
Okay, well, you can hop on your dinosaur and go to my website if you want to. It's www.jenniferconnor.net. It is a .net, and Connor is spelled O-R at the end. But I spend a lot of time on Facebook. You can look me up on my personal page if you want. I'm Jennifer Morgan Connor. I like making new friends. And I have a business page on there too that's just XOGenco. So, and then XOGenco is my handle everywhere. So
yeah. Well, thank you so much for sharing your brilliance.
Oh, wait, and Divorced Like a Boss podcast. Duh.
Oh my gosh, yes.
Yeah, Divorced Like a Boss is the name of my podcast, so come check that out.
Yes, and they can find it at iTunes, all the places.
Yes.
Cool. Thank you so much for being here. This was so fun.
Yes, thank you for having me.
Awesome. Thank you for listening, guys. If you love this episode, go ahead and tag us over on Instagram stories at HeyJenCasey and at
XOGenco.
XOGenco. What?
2 N's in my Jen. I'm the Jen with 2 N's.
And I'm the Jen with 1 N. So, you know, make sure to get that part right. No, just kidding. But tell us over on Instagram, let us know, what was your biggest aha, biggest takeaway from today, biggest action item. We love to hear from you guys and really see how you're taking what you got from the podcast and implementing it into your everyday life. So thank you for being here, and we will talk to you guys soon.